In the dusty town of Whisper Valley, outlaws made the deadly mistake of mocking the wrong bartender. They couldn't have known that the quiet man polishing glasses had more notches on his gun than their entire gang combined, or that their cruel taunts would awaken a legend they thought long dead, the infamous Prairie Shadow. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows through the windows of the Silver Star Saloon, catching dust motes that danced in the amber light. Nathan "Nate" Hawkins methodically polished a glass with practiced precision, his movements as measured and quiet as the man himself. 5 years he'd been tending bar here, and in all that time, Emma Hawthorne had never seen him waste a single movement or speak an unnecessary word. "Nate, have you ever thought about taking a day off?" Emma asked, counting the night's earnings behind the bar. Her question earned her the slight upturn of his mouth that passed for a smile these days. "What would I do with a day off, Miss Emma?" His voice was soft, almost gentle, the kind of voice that made most folks lean in closer to hear. It was also the kind of voice that made them underestimate him, which suited Nate just fine. The saloon was quiet this afternoon, just old Walt Jenkins nursing his usual whiskey in the corner, and Doc Green reading his medical journal at his regular table. The doc glanced up occasionally, his eyes meeting Nate's in that knowing way they had. Of all the people in Whisper Valley, only Doc Green knew why Nate's hands, now so careful with the delicate glassware, had once been feared throughout the Arizona territory. The peaceful routine was interrupted by the jingle of spurs as Marshal McAllister pushed through the batwing doors, his weathered face creased with concern. "Afternoon, Emma." "Nate." He nodded to them both, then made his way to the bar. "Got word from Cedar Ridge. Blackwood gang's been spotted heading this way." Nate's hands didn't pause in their work, but something flickered in his eyes, a shadow so brief anyone else might have missed it. Emma didn't miss much, though. She'd been running the Silver Star long enough to read men better than most. "Red Jack Blackwood?" she asked, her voice dropping. "Thought he and his bunch stayed up north near the railroad." "Times change," McAllister sighed, accepting the coffee Nate silently placed before him. "They hit 3 banks in the last month. Latest word says they're moving south, probably looking for easier targets now that the railroad's beefed up security." Doc Green had set aside his journal, listening intently. "How many in his gang now, Bob?" 5 that we know of," the marshal replied. "Blackwood, Clay Thorne, the Reed twins, and that young hothead Lucas Reeves. Mean bunch. They don't just rob. They make a show of it. Like, to humiliate folks before they kill 'em." Nate's hands finally stilled on the glass he was polishing. For just a moment, his fingers traced an old scar on his right palm, a habit none of them had ever mentioned but all had noticed. "Whisper Valley's got nothing worth their trouble," Emma said firmly, as if speaking it would make it true. "They'll pass us by." "Maybe," McAllister agreed, but his eyes drifted to Nate. "Still, it might be wise to send word to Carson City, get some extra deputies out here, just in case." "Takes 3 days for help to arrive from Carson City," Nate spoke softly, resuming his work. "If they're coming, they'll be here sooner than that." The marshal studied him for a long moment. "You seem mighty sure about that, Nate." "Just arithmetic, Marshal. Nothing more." But his words carried a weight that made the room feel suddenly smaller. Old Walt chose that moment to stumble to his feet, fishing in his pockets for coins. "Reckon I better head home 'fore dark. The clouds rolling in look like rain." He nodded to Emma. "Put it on my tab, Miss Hawthorne?" "Just like always, Walt." She smiled, making a note in her ledger. As the old man shuffled out, Doc Green gathered his things as well. "Think I'll do the same. Nate, don't forget to pick up those medicines I ordered for your headaches. Came in on yesterday's stage." Nate nodded, though everyone in the room knew he hadn't suffered a headache in all the years they'd known him. It was just one of those little fictions they all maintained, like pretending not to notice how he always kept his right hand free when serving drinks, or how his eyes constantly scanned the room even when it was empty. As the afternoon deepened toward evening, Grace O'Malley appeared for her nightly performance, her red hair catching the last rays of sunlight as she sat up near the piano. Her voice, when she began to warm up, was sweet and clear, a touch of beauty in a town that often had too little of it. "Rider coming," Emma announced from her spot by the window. "Moving fast." Nate's hands remained steady as he arranged bottles on the shelf, but his stance shifted ever so slightly. To most, he still looked like nothing more than a simple bartender preparing for the evening rush. But Marshall McAllister saw how the man's weight had settled on the balls of his feet, ready to move in any direction. The sound of thundering hooves grew louder, then stopped abruptly outside the saloon. The batwing doors burst open, revealing a young ranch hand, his face flushed with exertion and fear. Marshall McAllister, they're coming. The Blackwood gang. They just shot up Cedar Ridge. Killed the sheriff and his deputies. They're headed this way." In the sudden silence that followed, Nate carefully set down the bottle he was holding. His movements were still measured, still precise, but now they carried an entirely different quality, like a mountain lion uncoiling before a leap. "How far?" McAllister demanded. 2 hours, maybe less. They're moving fast and— The ranch hand swallowed hard. "They're killing everyone in their path.